Welcome to our April Outdoor Ministries Institute call. I'm really glad to see everyone, and I'm really glad that you are able to make it tonight. We have a couple of people to speak briefly, or as much as they want. But we're going to start with a friend of mine who I think I initially met in Idaho, if I'm not mistaken. When I first went to an outdoor ministries event, might have been Idaho. Glenn Svetnicka is the executive director of United Church Camps Incorporated, and I will let you speak, Glenn, to and introduce yourself, because that's as good as I get. So I will pin you to my screen. I'll pin you to the screen so that for the recorded part, it will. Yeah, there you go. Awesome. I'm glad you could make it.
Oh, thanks for the invitation, Joe. You're looking good with your beard, by the way. I like that. That's a beautiful look for you.
I'm growing it long so I can go to a Packers game this fall and not be cold. So
you let me know what game you want to go to, my friend. I will meet you there. I just sent my season tickets back. But anyhow, people don't want to hear us drivel on about the Packers and my addiction there. But yeah, Joe and I go back a few years, and I see her name. I don't see her face, but Bev and I go back a little ways as well. I had the privilege of serving as the chair of the Outdoor Ministry Association for the United Church of Christ for a few years. As such, we had seat at the inaugural OMC, what became the OMC, the Outdoor Ministry Connection table. It was the National Council of Churches Committee on Outdoor Ministry, and then we became the OMC. And it was my privilege to represent the United Church of Christ. I should tell you, I have dual standing. Our organization, United Church Camps Incorporated, also is the only Presbyterian facility in the state of Wisconsin. So we have 3 sites, and Joe's asked me here tonight to talk about how we're running that, and I'll give you a few words, but really this will be more fun if you get to ask me questions. So I'll start by saying hi to my friend Bev, and then I'll kind of keep on moving. I'm going to share my screen just for a moment, because if that's all right, Joe. Oh, nope, I can't. If you give me permission, I'm going to share just so people can get an idea a little bit about what a UCCI is. United Church Camps Incorporated started business back in 1902. We started as the Green Lake Bible Institute before the United Church of Christ even existed. And what we've done over the years is added sites. It's kind of counterintuitive. I think you're seeing our main site here, but we have 3 sites, and we fancy ourselves with 1 ministry and 3 sites. Our mission, probably not unlike a lot of what you all have, but we're trying to love God, all others, and the earth by providing some sanctuary, practicing some hospitality, and performing ministry. And like all of you, we've gone through a couple iterations through the years. So we started in 1902, at a second site in 1957 as the United Church of Christ is merging the Congregationals and the United or the Reformed Church. And so that's how Moon Beach came online. And, this performance of ministry through the years had iteration number 1, where it was pretty easy to run camps. We had people that wanted to send people, mostly their kids, and get them out of their house and send them away for a summer or a week or a weekend. But then Moon Beach, that when it came online, kind of started this concept of family camp. And that's grown, that we run 12 weeks of family camp at our Moon Beach institution. That's a retreat center focused on multi-generational events. I can go back and show you what a Moon Beach looks like briefly here. Nestled in Moon Lake, it's probably not unlike a lot of your camps. We have little red cabins that used to be a Jewish fishing camp before it became a family camp. And there's 16 red cabins right on the water, and 6 big barns in the middle for winter camping and such. All 3 of our sites go year round. Dechola Center is our youth alternative. Moon Beach is our multi-generational space. And then perfectly timed with the pandemic, on January 1st of 2020, we added Cedar Valley. Cedar Valley is a retreat center that, well, they cater to adults for the most part. I'll go back home here a little bit and get you in Cedar Valley. You can see there's a bunch of art classes. We have a farm working farm on site. They've converted the chicken coop to an art studio and do all kinds of fun things in there. What we've tried to do is not let our sites compete with each other, either geographically nor programmatically. We've tried to keep them relatively distinct and catering to the 220 churches that are affiliated with the United Church of Christ in the state of Wisconsin. Some of our churches are, bigger than others, of course, but we really have found that families will travel to go to Moon Beach. It seems like it's about 3.5, 4 hours from anywhere in the state. And the ones that don't want to travel will gravitate towards Cedar Valley and Dechola Center. You can get out on our website and kind of play around a little bit as best I can, so I'll stop bothering you and distracting you that way. I said there's been a couple iterations. In 1902, again, it was easy to run a youth camp. 1957, we figured out how to kind of do the family camp. And then in the late 70s, early 80s, I think like a lot of institutions, we had to figure out how to cater to retreats as well. If we wanted to go year round, we needed to figure out how to do all church retreats and quilting retreats and all the nonprofit retreats that are available. And that's taken us pretty far down the road, but about 4 years ago, we hit critical mass. We were trying to bring Cedar Valley online. We had 2 sites that had managing directors that were competing for resources inside of the organization, and we were kind of tripping over the institutional pieces, the ones that aren't very sexy when it comes to camping and outdoor ministry, but need to be done. So insurance and finance and marketing and development. And, God's been really good all through the years, but during that iteration, I stepped out of the Moon Beach leadership and became the executive director for UCCI. And we really tried to say, as we're building this plane while it was flying, we tried to say, how can we do this so that we're leveraging economies of scale? How can we make sure there's no redundancy, and what makes the most sense to centralize? And then, what could we afford? So, pandemic be darned. We still have a central organization that's funded to make the lives of the sites that much easier. In theory, we always say it's a lot like going to church during communion. Ideally, if you prepare the elements and set the table and then get out of the way and let God work, God's going to take over. So we've tried to position it so that our sites can focus on world-class hospitality and performing ministry in whatever version that comes. What we've done is we've loosely structured our organization around a couple of pyramids. We have a director of outdoor ministry, so site operations. Then we have a director of finance and administration that handles all of the human resources and bookkeeping tasks, and then a director of marketing and development. And that seems to work pretty well for us, again, in a non-pandemic world. Think like a lot of you, we were not open in 2020. 2021, we opened to about 2/3 capacity. And here in 2022, we're lagging behind pretty severely in our youth camps. Our other 2 facilities are kind of returning to whatever the next normal is going to be. What we tried to do with centralizing all of these, economies of scale is figure out how to do things more efficiently so that we weren't tripping or competing with one another. It's been pretty successful. What it's done to the executive director position is it's spread me too thinly. I'm missing a piece of the equation that I think is essential for all of our jobs, and that's the guest contact and interaction. You would appreciate that if we have 3 sites that are separated by 3.5 hours, it's difficult to get to all of them in a timely manner. And so our director of site operations has become more than just maintenance. He's been a pretty important part of our equation in making sure that he gets to the sites and is staying on top of not only site operations, but some of the hospitality ministry opportunities as well. The director of finance and administration is pretty straightforward. As I said, it's all the insurance, all the finance, with the exception of receivables. And if Joe's description was accurate, there might be opportunity for some of you to consider a model similar to this. I would say that you want to make sure that the sites keep responsibility always for receivables, not because nobody else can collect money, but that's an important relational connection with your guests. That's where the contracts are written. That's where you get immediate feedback on whether they enjoyed their time at your facility. And then as you're following up and saying, would you like to pay for that bill and or book another retreat? It's a great way for the sites to stay connected to their guests. We kind of learned that the hard way as well on one of our sites. We had someone that was gifted in all things systems, all things IT, and tried to automate the receivable part of the equation. And what we found is the guests pushed back pretty hard and said, no, we want to talk to a person, not to an invoice. And we want to give you direct feedback. So if you're looking to think about something like this, please don't get or let go of your receivables. I know that Bev has in the chat said, we're interested in hearing about how you came to have the 3 sites together. It really was a God thing across the board, in that we were, as I said, competing for limited resources. As a nonprofit, we live every essence of that word. In our conference, our adjudicatory body was really generous through the years with capital campaigns. But what happened is the site that could tell the better story got the more of the resources of those capital campaigns. And that's not a really smart way to do things unless you want, your infrastructure to crush around you. So we've gone to kind of a triage list, if you will. We rank things that each site needs in a color-coded black, red, yellow, and green, not unlike a triage list. If it's black, we need to take care of it immediately. It doesn't matter how much it costs, because someone's going to get hurt. Red, of course, is something that's urgent we have to take care of. Yellow it's getting there, and green is a nice to have. It's made the development part of our organization easier, if you can believe it or not. There are a lot of people that want to give to green projects. They always want to see another old bench that you probably don't need. And they can do that. That's the joy of a restricted donation. But it's identified for people when we have urgent or items that are going to be urgent soon. It puts a list before people so that they can kind of pick and choose where they want to see their money go. So a couple of years back, we had a person that wanted to give a life estate while she was still living. She and her husband decided that was the thing to do. So she said, "What would you do with $100,000?" And we said, well, we have a substandard pier that's going to get somebody hurt soon. And she said, that's perfect. I want to go there. And it just makes the equation around development easier to have that triage list, so that you're not competing on sites, you're competing on that which is important. So we, as I continue to go through this, we also knew that marketing and development needed to be yoked. So we put those pyramids together. We've tried to, again, stay on brand in everything we do, so that you can tell that we go together, that if you see our crest or our logo, it's one of our affiliated sites or one of our programs. And then we've really tried to put some teeth behind the development process. And we've tried to do development in a relational way. It's not just money. We're trying to develop our team. So the recruiting efforts around volunteers and the people that we're succession planning. Certainly doing development around programs. If there's something that we hear at one of our OMC meetings that makes some sense, we'll bring it back to the appropriate facility. And I've gone a little while already without mentioning that we have 3 sites, but we see that we have 4 distinct programs. Each of the sites stand on their own, and then we also have Camp Awesome, which is for children with autism spectrum conditions and their families. And we run 4 family camps, 1 youth camp, and a whole host of retreats geared at serving those populations. So it's another distinct part of our business. It accounts for nearly $300,000 of our total budget. So Harry has just asked, is there a specific person who looks after all the programming? Each site has some type of program person as well. Once we can afford it, we're going to centralize programming as well, in that there are economies of scale to be had there. We're finding that our family camp or multi-generational experiences are distinctly different in their programmatic needs than that of our youth programming. So we've got those 2 split yet, but once we find more money, it'll be the next thing that we would put together. The follow-up there, Harry, you got a great question. Staff training is both and. It's we're doing a lot of staff training for the total team around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So again, something that transcends sites and or program offerings. We've done book studies around that. We've studied, well, in our market, the discriminated people of choice would be, I think in Canada, you say First Nations, or Native Americans or Indians. So we started there with some of our training. We have a pretty strong Hmong population, and we've done some training around that. If I had more time, I'd tell you about the best thing that ever happened during the pandemic was our site that I reference as Dechola Center, which means Green Lake in Ho-Chunk language, used to be called Pilgrim Center. So when you have another hour, I'll tell you how a camp with the name Pilgrim in it expected Indians to come and be happy about it. So that's a whole nother conversation, but so finishing the thought, things that make sense to do total staff-wise, we do total staff-wise, and then the site-specific training, certainly Camp Awesome has a little different training than the other sites would have, and we spend a fair amount of time in servicing ahead of time, and then the youth camp, of course, is going to have site-specific training as well. Joe asked, is there one board? Yes, we have one board that oversees all 3 sites. The board has 3 distinct goals. Number 1 is to set the mission. Number 2 is to hire the chief executive, which is currently me. And then the third thing that we ask them to do is support the mission, not just in money, but in making us have some good governance. We draw the distinction. The board takes care of governance. The staff takes care of operations. And we meet at our board. UCCI merged basically, well, we merged in 1967 because the 2 sites were operating independent boards and it just didn't make any sense. We also operated as our independent 501c3 nonprofit because our adjudicatory body was afraid someone would drown in camp and open it up to litigation. So we've been out in front of that curve and been enjoying being our own 501. Marketing branding is not outsourced. It's done in-house. We've got a director of marketing development, and she has a staff, a small staff, but a staff nonetheless that works on grants, some that works on our CRM, so our database management, and one that works on correspondence, just a couple hours a week. But then we have a marketing person, a marketing coordinator that really handles all of the branding. Our board is not a working board. It's a governance board. They're currently morphing before us. Some of you that know me know that I, amazingly enough, am done with a 20-year career in outdoor ministry at the end of this month. So they're trying to figure out that, wow, maybe I did do some things. And they're trying to figure out how they're going to do all those things going forward. So they're currently working very hard to find that balance between governance and operations. And it's sometimes goes better than others. And I'm guessing those that have boards that they work for know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, I'm trying to answer these as they come in. This is fun. Joe's asking if alumni from the sites connect with the individual sites. Absolutely. We've got a pretty long storied history. At the family camp space, the kids that have grown up going to family camp typically become the ones that are lifeguards or arts people or nature people in that site. The youth camp, we have an and me franchise, so mom and me, grandma and me. And then people go all the way through the youth camps, and then by the time they age out, they're ready to become counselors or counselors in training. It's worked pretty well until we hit this pandemic, of course, because I don't know what the employment market north of the border looks like, but I know in the States, it's pretty challenging. The male of the species is a hard breed to find, and really just finding qualified people is becoming challenging. People can direct donations and projects to a specific site, and they do. There are Moon Beach homers, Daytola homers, and Cedar Valley homers, and that's cool. If they have a project that's site specific, by all means, they can do that. We try and encourage most of our gifts to go into our UCCI fund, so non-designated. We really don't spend any time at all fundraising for scholarship, because our judicatory body is very generous around scholarship, and it seems like that's an easy one for churches to jump in on. Just to put that in perspective, last year we really wanted money not to be a barrier to participation. We gave away $48,000 in scholarship for our programs, just our events, and we took in 32. So I think it perpetuates itself. We'll probably have to fundraise if it gets going down, but Harry, you can keep your questions coming. I'm loving this. Do we take corporate sponsorships? We do. Camp Awesome definitely does. There are some restrictions on the secular nature. There are grants that will only give to programs that are non-secular or that are non-religiously affiliated. Our grant writer's been pretty good at the base information and then tailoring it depending on what those grants are. We don't have a lot of corporate sponsorships. Our biggest sponsor is like I said, the Wisconsin Conference of the United Church of Christ, but we feel pretty blessed that some corporate sponsors have helped us out. The biggest savings that we've seen and the board thinks I think has happened by being centrally managed is the stuff is not getting in the way of the hospitality. The hospitality is our lifeblood. That's why I cannot stress enough to keep the receivables, if you ever contemplate this, to leave it at the camp or the whatever site, so that you have that human interaction. That's the biggest savings has been on some of the things, like I said, on just insurance or accreditation or things that just get in the way of running a solid program. We can take those off the plate and make sure that they're running efficiently. So IT, right? You can trip over your internet. I say internet is like for your food service. People should not be coming to your camp for either of those, but they will stay away. They will definitely stay away if your food is substandard or if your internet is lacking. And in our case, that was a huge part of the Camp Awesome world. They were pretty tech dependent, and we've centralized our phone banks, for instance, so that at high peak registration areas, we can have literally everybody in the company answering a phone. It doesn't matter where they are location wise. The pandemic has been terrible for a lot of things, but it's really helped us with our centralized people can literally be spread all over the state. And in one case, we have somebody working in Vermont, which is several states over. Unexpected cost to this model, certainly anytime you're in some redundancies, you want to make sure that you're taking a look at those. I think we have opportunity to scale back on some of our centralized pieces. We had to invest heavy, but I think we've probably overinvested on the marketing end of things and underinvested on development. I'm trying to read these as we go here. Staff training, the cross training and advancement. That's been one of the hidden gems of this. We can do our own succession planning. So we can start people out, maybe as let's just say a lifeguard that, here's a call to outdoor ministry. We can move them between 3 sites. We started with some interns prior to the pandemic. And then one of our interns is now one of our managing directors. That he gravitated towards learning our food service and our housekeeping and our maintenance. And now he's running a pretty robust physical plant. And literally he's been on our staff now, I guess, almost 20 years, because he started when he was 17. But he's come all the way up through the succession planning model. So that's helped quite a bit. We, amazingly enough, are not ACA accredited. We were, but we're not. We haven't been for 50 years. So that's one of the things that's on the next low-hanging fruit. And I know that you have Bev that can keep you all pointed in the right direction. We would do well to have someone like a Bev visiting our sites and pointing us in the right directions. Food services are all on site. They are not outsourced. We go year round at all 3 of our sites. Our adult retreat center tailors to kind of a healthy vegetarian type model. So we've tried to tailor our menus so that they are not competing. We don't want our sites having to defend their food services. We want people to come and just get the same experience wherever they're at. They're all year-round sites. They're staffed at the year-round in the key positions. Each site has a managing director. Each site has a maintenance person. In 2 cases, the maintenance positions are part-time. We have office people or food service, depending on what's going on. One site does about, just to put it in perspective, about $750,000 a year in revenue, and that one has a little more of our full-time staffing. The other 2 sites do about $450,000 a year. Excuse me. So they have more of a seasonal staff, if you will. The one site that we just picked up at Cedar Valley, they have no specific job duties. They have a managing director and then a staff of generalists. It's what we inherited there, and we've kept it running. That's been kind of a blessing and something we're learning on the fly. Our non-summer rental groups are, well, this is iteration number 3 now, Joe. We tried to cater to UCC churches, and that's taken us just so far. Now we're trying to court the secular nonprofits, if you will. We've got a whole host of events. We have, there's a group out of Chicago that does street training. They come and use us because they're close in proximity, and they're just looking for a facility. So we've really tried to cater to nonprofits and not take money away from any of the hotels or any of the restaurants in our markets. It also protects our nonprofit status. Bev is asking how much redevelopment of the property you've had to do in order to have 3 focus groups. Not as much as you would think, and let me answer that question a little more directly. Our society as a whole is telling us some pretty clear stories. If you're over a certain age, you're saying, do not make me share a bathroom. Do not make me sleep on a bunk bed. So we've really, in our multi-generational sites for years, we've been trying to get families their own living space and their own bathroom, and have been pretty successful, with the creature comforts. We're finding in our youth alternative camp that people are telling us the same thing. They don't want to change in front of anybody else in a bunkhouse shower. As all things LGBTQ plus enter the foray, we are not, from a self-analysis, very welcoming around the T part of that alphabet. We want to make sure that folks that identify differently have the opportunity to be themselves. It's why we've tried to, embrace pronouns everywhere inside of our name tags and our organization. It's why we're building safe space inside of our cabins for people to just change in privacy. I think the youth are telling the same things that our adults have been telling forever. Truly, don't make me share a bathroom, and give me some space to be me, whatever that means. The intercultural, would you claim to be? How intercultural would we claim to be? I'm your outdoor ministry professionals, your friends. I'm going to be straight up and tell you that we know, as I said earlier, the discriminated people in our markets, and we're trying to not be that organization. When it comes to black and brown racial discrimination, our state's ridiculous. Milwaukee and Madison are the only places that you'll find black and brown people. So our interculturalness is horrid, and it plays out on our board and in our staffing. And it frankly is it's a growth opportunity for our organization. I'm going to take the liberty of going off just a little bit here. I'm sharing my screen one more time. I don't know who asked that question, but it's a great one, and I appreciate it. So what you're seeing here is not just words on a paper. These have been with us for a while, certainly as we've gone through our renaming process. This land acknowledgement is deferring to the fact that the Menominee, Ho-Chunk, and Ojibwa nations are very much alive in our markets. And in the case of the Chola Center, we have effigy mounds on site that literally have not been attended to. So we're in the process of marking those, making sure that they have the appropriate reverence, and acknowledging our First Nations communities that have been here way before us. The diversity statement, I'm going to air some dirty laundry here and tell you that we actually had a EEOC claim that thankfully was dismissed, but I don't celebrate that. It hurts the fact that our guests were not clued into our interculturalness or lack therein, and got us into a spot where the diversity that we had on staff did not feel welcomed. We've worked tirelessly and quite hard to try and figure this one out and figure it out quickly. And you can see our value and diversity statement here. That's more than a statement. We formed a DEI committee to help us with this process. Diversity, equity, and inclusion has to be paramount in everything that we're doing. And we're doing things like a lunch and learn for this month around trans topics. We've got a guest speaker that came in and did just an amazing job of helping us understand why pronouns are a thing. And understand, I'm an old white guy, I can say pretty confidently that I'm a racist. And that I'm going to have to work really hard to position myself differently and lead my organization differently. And that means I'm going to have to be really conscious about recruiting black and brown people and being intercultural every opportunity. And I know that I'm going to have to work my tail off to learn. Campers sign a diversity statement on camper registration forms. Absolutely. We work really hard to make sure that they can support both our land acknowledgement and our diversity statement. We make it part of our covenant building on each night. Doesn't matter if you're in a family camp or if you're in a youth camp, we really try to make sure that that's part of our covenantal agreement with one another. And, sometimes we do really well and other times we trip all over it. That's why we call it the practice of hospitality. If we mess up, we're going to apologize for it. And we're going to do our best to correct it, whatever it is. And understand you're talking to a person that 20 years ago when I came to Moon Beach, they were in their 5th year of Rainbow Family Camp for lesbian and gay head of households and their families. So I've kind of grown up understanding that LGBTQ plus folk want the same thing that everybody else wants. They want a safe place to be, absent of any kind of fear. I'm also the proud father of a gay son with a husband that I value greatly in our family. You never know for sure what your openness and your own personal beliefs around diversity are until you get to see things face to face. Thankfully, that is not my gay son, that is my son, Christian. And he's taught me just a ton through the years. And I frankly think that the camp taught us how to love him by embracing the Rainbow Family Camp mantra. So again, if you want to invite me back, I can talk about that for hours and hours, but it all goes together on this great ride that is outdoor ministry and for my organization.
Glenn, you are doing awesome. I don't think that you answered my one question about advice to boards, about talking to other boards to explore who might want to explore mergers or centralization.
Yeah.
Or you just avoided it. That could be possible too.
Well, I kind of avoided it, but I honestly would tell people that were trying to get a board up and running. I would talk to Joel Winship at the PCCA about those that have separately incorporated, because I think that's a necessary first step. From there, board governance is it's a denominational hot potato, and different denominations treat things differently. I found that the Presbyterians, for instance, are an orderly bunch with their Book of Order, and that's going to be a little different than those of us that fly around in the UCC. I think the United Church of Canada is a perfect synthesis of the two. So I think you would be right to do something like this. You're going to want to get some good advice for people that have tripped over it. Like the UCC, for instance, when they were merging and forming this board, it was right when the Hatfields and McCoys were trying to get learn to play with one another. And it generationally took about 30 years. So I guess I would offer, if there's anybody contemplating this, I would be happy to do a sidebar, whether I'm employed with the UCCI or not. I'm not going to forget things as I leave, and I'll be somewhere else that you can reach out to me. I'm sorry. Aaron is asking, with the central board, is each of your sites individually incorporated? Great question. No. We've worked tirelessly to make sure that everything comes under the UCCI umbrella. So one nonprofit corporation. Frankly, and I'm gonna put this out as one thing that I would learn from. I would not put the United Church of Canada anywhere in your nonprofit board name, because we're finding that we're walking some of our secular partners by having the UCC in our name on our corporate level. So I would call you the Amazing Outdoor Ministry Site Board or Corporation, or something that doesn't have any kind of religious affiliation in the name, if you're going to contemplate that.
That's great. Bev, you had your hand up. Did you want to say something?
Well, Aaron actually asked the question that I was going to ask about whether they're incorporated, but I'm going to follow up on that a little bit from the perspective of, so UCCI, just so I understand this, that incorporates is the umbrella for the 3 camps you've been talking about, correct? Now,
correct.
What other United Church of Christ camps, are they incorporated or not? Because we have worked to the point that all but one of our camps is incorporated because of the liability protection that comes with that.
Yeah, and you're ahead of the game, Bev. The other UCCI camp, or excuse me, the other United Church of Christ camps are scrambling to get to separate incorporation, and frankly, several of them are about 30 years behind the curve. What's happening in the United Church of Christ is the judicatory body is saying, oh my goodness, we can't afford to run these camps because they're crushing, with infrastructure needs, and they need so much money. So they've got good land that we can sell and keep the judicatory body running. It becomes fighting words, and please don't quote me. I know this is being recorded, so it's in posterity, but I think outdoor ministry in a lot of our denominations is going to outlive the denomination. Certainly they're going to be around doing ministry at our sites longer because they're separately incorporated than the denominations are going to be around. I don't know what's happening in Canada, but I know that people are not beating the path back to church, and certainly not beating a path back to the Sunday school or faith formation. We've got to be positioning ourselves to attract and retain the spiritual but not necessarily religious folks, and then be there for people that have learned to worship from home with their remote. We got to figure out how to welcome them onto our sites so they can hear the still small voice of God tell them that they're loved.
That is excellent. Glenn, thank you so much for being here. We're going to briefly let Dan speak about a partnership that has shared resource. I'm not sure how you describe it, Brother Dan. But did you want to talk a bit to us about Kenesserie and Camp Vincent?
Sure. So there was a typo in the email that Joe sent out, because this is not any kind of expertise. This is, we are fumbling our way through this arrangement that we have committed to with Camp Vincent. So Camp Vincent is a Catholic St. Vincent de Paul Society camp that's about half an hour from Kenesserie, within the confines of our same municipality of Chatham, Kent. When we were at camp in the 80s, and Joe will remember this, we used to call them Camp Vinny, and it was like the wild, wild west over at Camp Vinny. We heard all kinds of wild stories. And it seems that it got that way again. And so at the start of the pandemic, they had an essential complete turnover of their, I think it's called their particular council committee, which is where they run that particular council of the St. Vincent de Paul Society runs the local St. Vincent de Paul store and the camp. And then every parish has their own St. Vincent de Paul conference that then maybe supports the camp a little bit. But they had only one person on the committee that really had an idea about what happened at camp. And that, combined with the pandemic and the loss of a couple of years of staff, led them to approach us to pick our brains. And Shane and I, Shane is on the call, toured some of their camp committee around our site in the fall of just last fall, maybe, or winter. No, it was like spring of 2021, early spring of 2021, which led them to, I thought, jokingly say, hey, I know you're the executive director here, but do you want to be our camp administrator too? And I'm like, that's not, this is a full-time job. So, but I said, we wouldn't be opposed to some kind of other arrangement. So back and forth conversations here and there, touching base, led to some more formal meetings this last fall with 3 members of their camp committee, I guess they call it, to talk about how we might help them. So we entered into a service contract with them where we defined 4 areas where we would provide administrative services, including managing their camp registration, their staff hiring and kind of setting the training, handling, I forget what the other 2 areas were, overseeing, compliance. So with their water regulations, public health inspections, and if they had an accreditation this year, I don't know whether they do or not with the Ontario Camps Association. And we kind of left marketing and fundraising up to them, but kind of oversee the operation of the camp. And so that started formally in January, and it's going. I don't know how well it's going as of now, but we're doing hiring and we're making plans, and I meet with them every 2 weeks, and then I work away at some things, and yeah, it's interesting. One of the reasons we entered into it, well, there's a couple of reasons we entered into it. One, for some financial benefit. They're paying we're not giving it away. They're paying $30,000 a year for us to Kenesserie Camp, for us to provide these administrative services. But the other reason that was just as important to Shane and I, as we talked about it, is that we'd heard stories that they were kind of like fly by the seat of your pants again. When there's only 2 camps in Chatham, Kent, and we know that there's a certain portion of our population who don't even really think of us as real camps because we're here and we're not in central Ontario or Muskoka, and we're not on little lakes and all that. That if something went bad at Camp Vincent because they didn't have proper training and leadership or policies, that it would hurt us too. And so we wanted to and we want everybody to have a good camp experience, whether they're there or whether they're at Kenesserie. So we wanted to do that, make sure that there was this kind of professional approach to summer camp in Chatham, Kent. So we've entered into that. We're working our way through it. It feels like the first year is a lot of kind of figuring stuff out as we go. And hopefully things get smoother and run a little easier next year. That's all. I don't know what else I can share, but I'll answer the question if he has any. But I don't know if I'd describe it as a shit show right now, but it might not be that far off some days, it feels like. Oh, can I say that? Can I say that here?
Clean viewing. Go ahead, Bev.
Oh, gonna get NC-17 rating now. Sorry.
And is do the Vincent camps, are they accredited by the Camping Association? Are they members of the Provincial Camping Association?
The Camp Vincent, this one is, yes.
Yeah.
In fact, I think Joe did their last visit.
I did, and I did not think that anyway, yes, their last visit is probably the reason why Dan is there now, and that was
He may have wrote a letter of concern to the accreditation.
Oh, there was a very big letter of concern.
Yeah.
This topic is something that I think, these are like seeds that I want to plant in people's minds, and a camp has come forward to Pierce Williams looking for a new site to partner with Pierce Williams, and like Glenn said, it's the big things that they just don't want to think about anymore, right? They don't want to think about maintenance of a site. They don't want to think about the food service on the site. They just want to run an amazing program, and I think the idea of centralized, like one person who takes care of like insurance crap and property tax crap and all of those things will save. Would allow more energy to be put by other individuals towards like amazing camp, and so it is great to it's great. If you have questions or things, I will. You can always reach out to Glenn. Glenn, what is do you want to drop your email in the chat? Make sure it's to everyone. And then if you have questions for Dan, I don't know how we explore this more, but or if some people feel we need to or not need to. That's a wholly side point. Because in the end, for anybody who's a board member on this call, I suppose we don't need Dan being our spotlight. In the end, it's really a board issue. It's not a staffing issue, right? The board is the people who have to come to this realization at some point in their time. So Glenn at UCC for 3 more weeks, and then you're retiring to somewhere else. So that's great. Are you moving out of Wisconsin then?
No, the full story is I'm getting married on the 4th of May, and I'm going to go to Scotland for a little while, and then I'll figure out what God wants to do with me when I get back.
Well, congratulations on your impending wedding. That's great.
Thank you, Joe.
A couple
Are you
of
wearing a kilt, Glenn?
I'm going to try. Yes, I really want to. Not for the wedding, but when I get to Scotland.
Oh, I thought Svetnicka is a great Scottish name. Come on, there's how you go for it.
Joe, I just got to give you props. You're one of the few people who can say that last name well, and I'm impressed every time.
That is awesome. Here's a brief update for everyone. We do not have we don't have anyone lined up or a topic lined up for next month. So, is there anything? Like I'm looking at what we have. We have some of the topics that we still haven't talked about: our social media and the future of advertising, staffing 2022 challenges. I'm not sure that talking about it next month is going to be any use. We'll just be further along being frustrated with staffing. Insurance costs to me seems like at this point a fall discussion, I don't even want to think about it in May of any given year. But maybe I'll aim to have some social media stuff and how we can plan better in the summer for those things. I have 2 cooks, Vicky, that I'm hiding. Mama Bear and Ika, Ika's an old camp director of mine, who some of you know, is in training this year to be my camp cook and has committed to 4 years this year plus 3 years. So thank God I just don't need to worry about a cook for years, which is awesome. I don't want them in Saskatchewan. You have the highest death rate of this pandemic in Canada, so they said no to that. Janice is like, did you have to call her out like that? Yes. Here's some updates about Kansas City in November. We have funds, and I have a meeting with Amy Crawford at National Office to talk about additional grants for, I'm not sure what that grant is called, and Bev or Kathy could help me out here. It's the 3-way grant where you give part. No, yeah, Kathy is
vision grant or individual learning grants.
Yeah, so we're gonna play with that and talk. I'll talk to Amy about if we can apply for that. The question that still flows through my mind, and Robin, you can. I think about you trying to fly anywhere, and in my mind, I think, well, what is equity, right? Like, what is equitable in the, and is it just saying that 75% of your travel costs would be covered? Like, is that equitable? Because then that hits everyone at a different dollar amount. Um, that I don't know. And until somebody tells me what's right or what's wrong, I'll still think about it and not fall asleep at night. Because our thought is that we will probably have enough funds to pay for people's conference fee and for people's food fee at the conference and the base accommodations. So if you want to upgrade your accommodations, because at Heartland Center in Kansas City, there'll be different levels. That additional fee would be up to you. And then we can look at travel costs as well. And also understanding that it's during the week. So some people who are employed, I can't make up your wage, but that's an individual part for you all to deal with. So yes, time and availability. We're all good. Did anybody have any news that they want to share? While you're thinking about that, we hosted our first event in 2 years last weekend for 20 youth locally, and we were on CTV News here in Ontario, and so you can look it up. A friend of camp did a great piece on it, so it was good. I did that with grant money, and it is a PCCA conference, and it is the Outdoor Ministries Gathering. It's both of those things, Bev, and it's in Kansas City, and I'm eating barbecue. All of those things are true. So we'll go from there. Anybody else have news they want to share before we close for the evening?
Joe?
Yes, Bev.
I'm going to take the opportunity. Most of you should have gotten my email a few weeks ago about the what's happening with the camping standards and the fact that we're not doing any visits this year again, partly because we don't to put you over the edge and you're jumping off cliffs and into lakes and all the rest of it, but also because we need some time for you to get the new ones. After 14 some odd years, we are now going to be using the Provincial Camping Association accreditations as part of our process, simplifying what you're required to do for the United Church. And with the loss of presbyteries, we're also working with the regions to do more of the visits rather than national people going out so that there's more of a connection. So that came out a couple of weeks ago, and the standards are now with the editors, and we hope to have an online version ready by the end of April, 1st of May that you can see. And it's down to like 10 pages for the entire thing.
That's amazing, because I've been going through the Ontario camping standards with a camp I'm a mentor for the OCA, and it's 264 pages. So plus 10 is fine. Yes. But the OCA standards have so much educational content hidden in there. That's what keeps doing it. So that is awesome. Thank you, Bev, for that work. Anybody else have news, information? Questions are also allowed at this moment in time. That is great. I love a talkative crowd. Oh, Harry waved his hand like he was going to actually try and unmute himself.
I'm sorry. If anyone, 2022, it's 2023, we're looking for a camp rental somewhere on the East Coast, and 2024, we're looking for somewhere on the West Coast for 1 to 2 weeks. We want to expand Rainbow Camp, so the board's mandate now. The 5-year plan says we're going up to 700 kids per summer, and there's no way we can do that at one site. So we're trying to get site specific. So if you're interested and it's interesting when Joe said, like people want to rent camps rather than own them. We're stuck in the middle. Our board now wants to own a specific camp, so we're looking at that where we are. But I would love the idea of renting or buying other camps, but when I started this, it was like there's benefits of just renting, and for the specialty camp that we want to run, I think just renting across the country would be easier. And how that looks, we would really like to partner with the United Church Camp.
That's awesome. Brendan, thank you for sharing that. So congratulations, Sparrow Lake got a $50,000 Trillium grant for a site audit. So did they extend the deadline of the April grants? I didn't understand that part. While you might be typing a reply to that, Harry failed to note that Rainbow Camp won, or Welcome Friend Association won $100,000 from Colin Mockery not laughing for 6 hours, which is an interesting show to watch on Amazon Canada. Interesting indeed. So, yeah. Long-term planning updates. Yeah. So Trillium, I know that we got some Trillium money from the December grant cycle, and so did Kenesserie. The year is still, I know, Jill, there's still an embargo on this. I get it. But verbally, we're allowed to say things, just not send things out in writing. I talked with my lady today, and so that's great. There's lots of money out there doing stuff for good, and this is great. So perfect. If you contact Harry, how do they contact you? He will put his email in the chat, and I won't immediately delete the meeting. So we'll go from there. Thank you so much, everybody. It has been great. It is 8:29. We are ending on time. Thank you, Glenn. Your Bucky the Beaver t-shirt, Bucky the Benji the Beaver. I'm actually wearing one of the originals. It's so faded. It will be on Etsy after the strike is done.
Okay.
It will be up there for people to order and go. Perfect.
Thanks for having me. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks so much, Glenn. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.